Halito, y'all. Chimachukma. This is Chief Steve coming at y'all again with some more verifiable truth here on another episode of True Story. As you can see, my source internet archive, archive.org. There's my source right there. I like to use that. That's my number one thing that I do as far as getting good and verifiable truth information of true history, what I like to call true story. So today we're going to be talking about the United States Department of Agriculture and the Department Circular 355. Washington, this is based out of Washington, D.C., September 1925. All right. Basically, Department of Agriculture, what was happening with our people a lot in the 20s as far as our land ownership and our farming. A lot of things was going on as far as our land. And if you don't know what was going on, then I'm about to get into some of it a little bit. But if you really want to know some more information, I suggest researching for yourself what was going on during the 1920s as far as Negro farmers and landowners. A lot of the Black Wall Streets were up and around this time, and a lot of them were going down as well during this time. And see what was happening. The United States Department of Agriculture, since the early 1900s, were issuing out agents to scout different farms and supposedly showing people how to farm the quote-unquote American way. So a lot of our people were starting to get hired on as agents to scout these different farms. And as you're going to learn going into this particular document is that the majority of the farmers in America were the indigenous copper-colored people that they know today and know back then and today as Negroes. But we know that we were the American Indian. They know that we were the American Indian, and it was our land. And that was why we owned the majority of acreage and the majority of farms. So they knew this thing, and they decided to have agents hired, and particularly agents of our color, to make sure that we were doing things according to their standards. And if we weren't doing things to their standards, then that gave them all right to infiltrate our farms and possibly get them taken away and seized. So as you'll go in here, you'll see that you basically see the plan unfold. And this was like, I guess you can say this is phase 2, basically, to where they started hiring more of our people to scout our farms because, you know how we are. We don't like outsiders looking in on our business. But the foreigners found this out. And this is why they started hiring our own to go on our farms, to scout our farms, and to give us so-called advice on how to keep our farms up the American way. But we were the original ones that was here on our farms. So I don't know how they felt like that was going to work, but hey, it is what it is. We see what's going on today. But we still have a lot of labor disputes with farmers going on right now with this government. So this is basically the blueprint as to why things are happening the way they are now and why things happened the way they did back then. So without further ado, let's get into the United States Department of Agriculture, Department Circular 355, Washington, D.C., September 1925. This is extension work among Negroes conducted by Negro agents in 1923. J.A. Evans is the Assistant Chief, Office of Cooperative Extension Work. So this is what they were labeling these. They were called extension agents. Anyway, let's get into it. This is the blueprint. This is what it's all about right here. It gets right into the action on the first page. Practically, all the Negro farm operators in the United States are located in the 16 southern states. The census of 1920 enumerated more than 920,000 Negro farmers operating approximately 27 million acres of improved land and farms. In all effort to do more effective demonstration work among this large racial group of farmers, there has been slowly developed in most of these states an auxiliary extension force composed of Negro men and women agents working exclusively among people of their own race. So they see, in order for us to get a better eye view and have closer ears to the ground, we need to hire their own people, put their own people in place so we can see what's going on with these farms. Why do these people own so much land? How are they taking care of all this land? How are they so self-sufficient? We need to know. Farm demonstration work began in the South in 1904. They were starting to teach they fellow settlers and supposedly Negroes too, but we all know we already knew how to farm, hence why we owned the majority of the farms in the South. But like I said, I'm gonna keep beating that with a dead horse if I have to, or keep beating that dead horse with a bat if I have to, because shoot, that's what it was. And the only reason why we owned that much land is because we were the Aboriginal people of the land. But anyway, I'm gonna keep going. Farming demonstration work began in 1904 in the South, in 1904. The first Negro agent was appointed in November 1905 in cooperation with Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. A few months later, a similar agent was appointed to work in Virginia in cooperation with Hampton Institute. Both of these men have been employed continuously since their appointment. Okay, so in 1904 and 1905 was just those two that was working, you know. So that's it was only those, but it says both of these men have been employed continuously since their appointment. The cooperating institutions are two of the leading Negro agricultural and industrial schools of the South. So these brothers was running schools. They were running these and showing our folks how to do the damn thing, as far as how to take care of ourselves, be self-sufficient on our land, how to cultivate our land properly, and basically getting it cracking. They was preserving the generational wealth for our youth in these different institutions. It says, because of their interest and influence, Negro demonstration work in the beginning developed most rapidly in these states. So now, since we were basically teaching our own people how to teach people how to farm. And so once, right, it is so like once that started happening, the demonstration workers started developing. The demonstration work started developing rapidly. Okay? As it says, several years elapsed after the first Negro demonstration agents began work before the wisdom of the policy was generally conceded. See, so even then, as we were learning, several years passed until we actually started going out and helping people how to actually farm and cultivate the land. And then still then, the Department of Agriculture didn't have no policy or anything put in for them to actually be agents of anything of that nature. But it says several years elapsed after the Negro demonstration agents began work before the wisdom of the policy was generally conceded, and the number of such agents materially increased. In 1909, about 3 additional states, Mississippi, Georgia, and South Carolina, had Negro demonstration agents on their rolls, and the total number of such employees in all states was 9. So now they starting to hire them up. They starting to increase in numbers. As the work gained recognition, however, other states began to employ Negro agents, you see. And in recent years, the number has been increased about as fast as conditions would permit. In most states, the first Negro agent was employed for general work in a district comprising a number of counties, and the employment of workers in individual counties followed only when the agent had succeeded in arousing interest in the work and in obtaining sufficient local cooperation. So they were sending these folks, these brothers and sisters out here to get people interested in farming. And then once they got them interested into farming, they started dispatching these agents out there and showing them how to farm. And it says, as a rule, Negro agents were employed first. I wonder why. I'll tell you why. Because they were the aboriginal, indigenous, copper-colored people of this land. They knew how the land worked, right? So Negro agents were employed first to work in counties having the largest rural Negro population, okay? But the extent of local interest and cooperation and the attitude of white officials and farmers in particular counties were also important factors in determining their location. So not all of them were cool with these Negroes showing them how to farm, right? The first Negro woman agent was employed for county work in Okfuskee, lack of a better word, I'll try to find a better way to say that next time. That's the best I can do. Y'all bear with me. So that county in Oklahoma in 1912, the Chamber of Commerce in Boley, a Negro town in the county, cooperated in her employment. She is still at work and in the same county as in 1925. When the Smith-Lever Law became effective in 1914, y'all look that up when y'all get a chance, about 100 Negro men and women demonstration agents were working in 11 states. See, starting to grow, starting to increase. This special service for Negroes was the only branch of extension work that did not suffer loss of agents owing to readjustments after the war. So even after, after that major war went down, they were still growing in numbers. They did not suffer any loss, because that's one thing that our people knew how to do. That was a staple of our culture as indigenous copper-colored people of America. We knew how to cultivate the land, and we knew how to show others how to cultivate and preserve the land. On the contrary, the number of agents employed has grown steadily as the value and significance of their work have been more clearly recognized. At the close of 1923, 294 Negro agents were employed in all branches of extension work in 16 states. This was an increase of 44 agents during the year and of 52 since 1921. In a number of states, the Negro agents constitute numerically a considerable part of the state extension organization. It must not be inferred, however, that no extension work is done among Negro farmers in these states except by Negro agents. We were not listening to anybody else but our own at this point. And they knew that. And that's why they started sending the agents in to work with us and getting reports from them about our land, about our ways, how we did things, and then showing the other foreigners how to farm according to how we were doing things. See, you got to put two and two together. You got to put two and two together. All right? From the inception of demonstration work in the South, both white and Negro farmers were selected as demonstrators and cooperators. The services of white extension agents have been and are now available. Now, as in now available, it wasn't available before when its first inception. But now, these white agents are now available to farmers of both races seeking information and advice in solving their farm problems. Why? Because now they know how we operate, thanks to those Negro agents working for the county. Some junior club work also. So they were even affecting the youth. They were showing the youth how to get down and having an influence on them. Some junior club work also is done among Negroes by white agents. No separate reports, however, are made by white agents of work done with Negroes. You hear that? So they was working with us, but we couldn't work with them on as far as like white agents having work done with Negroes. There wasn't no separate reports, however, because you already know how that goes. So that even though a considerable part of their time was spent in work with Negro farmers and their families, it cannot be segregated in their reports. So they were doing work with them, and they just weren't. They weren't saying they were working exclusively with these farmers, and I think that's mostly because the reputation of the agents and stuff. Because you can only imagine the racial tension between this time if they knew that, okay, well, this guy, he's working with these Negroes down here and blah blah blah. I don't want to work with this agent because he works with Negroes. He's a Negro lover. You already know how that goes. So on paper, they weren't putting that they were working with us, but they were still sending them in to try to work with us. But on paper, our people could work with them and put on there, and they had to make sure that they accounted that they were working with these Negro farmers exclusively. And although it is believed that more work with Negro farmers was done by white extension agents and specialists in the southern states in 1923 than in any previous year, I wonder why. It is doubtful whether white agents can make as effective extension contacts with Negroes as the Negro agents, because they cannot enter into Negro home life or social activities. So we were not allowing them to come into our home life or social activity. So now it's starting to make sense. It's making more sense in this case of they were allowing them to go in, yet we weren't allowing them to go in. The department was sending them, but we were denying them more so than not, rather than the Negro agents. Why? Because they figured it was better to work with folks that look like us rather than those pale folks that you already knew came with certain intentions and motives. And so it was easier for the Department of Agriculture to go incognito and still push their agenda by using our people against our own, rather than just outright sending the white agents out there with them. And when they were sending the white agents out there with them, it was more so, okay, here, since we don't really have we don't have anybody else to work with these guys, we're going to send you out there, but just don't put on paper that you actually worked with these Negroes. Just record, the white farmers that you work with. But they were still sending them in. And those that let them in, let them in. But for the most part, it was known that they were not able to work with us due to not being in the mix, not being invited to the cookout, for lack of a better term. Home life or social activities was off limits to them. And that was by our own accord. And it says the work of Negro extension agents is of special significance and promises to be a possible means for the solution of some of the economic and other problems arising through the presence of Negroes in such large numbers on southern farms. See? So this was a problem. This was an economic problem for them. They weren't getting We were keeping everything in the mix. We were self-sufficient. We were our own franchise. And this was a problem. This was a problem for the government, especially since we owned the majority of the acreage of land, basically in the South. And the South was the number one agricultural system. It was in the southern region. You know, they don't sound like slaves to me. I mean, I know this is 1925, and supposedly slavery was ended in 1865. Whatever, if you want to go with that narrative, that's fine. But just being advocate, how did slavery just end in 1865? But by 1925, just 60 years, just what, literally just in 60 years, one or two generations, we own the majority of land in the South. It's not adding. It's just the math is not mathing. How do you go from 0 to 100 that damn quick? You know what I mean? To owning nothing, to being a refugee, somebody that speak a whole another different language, that didn't know nothing about America, didn't know nothing about this land or this soil. How in 60 years, I mean, and granted, you worked on plantations and everything of that nature and the slavery, just playing devil advocacy. How in 60 years did we develop the business smarts and the intelligence to own 27 million, not for 920,000 people to own over 27 million acres of land in just 60 years? It doesn't make sense. They owned it already. This was in the family already. By this time, the heirs have already been passed down the inheritance, and we were so good at what we did that we was teaching them how to do it. We were teaching ourselves first, and then we started branching out and started teaching them. And then they saw that, they started hiring us. The government started hiring us for these different settlers that was coming in. They were taking the land, and then they were sending us as government agents to teach them how to mechanize it, how to industrialize these farms, like how we did. They literally used us against us. And it's sad, but it's the truth of it. I'm going to go a little further. Negro agents are engaged in the general cooperative extension work carried on under the provisions of the Smith-Lever Law. Once again, look up that law. Under the general supervision of the United States Department of Agriculture and the direct supervision of the state agriculture colleges through the state extension director, 2 Negro field agents with headquarters at Tuskegee Institute, Alabama, and Hampton Institute, Virginia, represent the United States Department of Agriculture in contacts with Negro extension leaders, Negro colleges, and organizations and leaders of their race in their respective territories, which together cover 15 states. So these two Negroes that started these institutions and was teaching our youth how to farm and how to preserve that land, they're running this whole institution as far as the extension work amongst the Negroes. Just nuts. Y'all excuse my baby. He in there crying. He restless right now. Mama's got him though. So, their duties are, number 1, to cooperate with state directors and other white supervisory agents, organizations, and individuals within the states in developing Negro extension work. And number 2, to assist Negro state supervisory agents in planning work, preparing reports, establishing relationships, and generally in getting more uniform and effective service from the local agents. And 3, to study the best methods of doing extension work among Negroes. Why are they focused on us so much? Why are they focused on us so hard? You have white farmers out there, but they know who owned the majority of the land. They know who owned the majority of the farms. They knew who was better at doing the farming. That's why they focused on us so hard. They was focusing on us so hard to report and establish relationships, and they were using that information, that intel, to show these white supervisors and stuff how to do their job better. And these white supervisors was going and reporting back to the government and about all these different reports and established relationships, basically showing how we operate. And I mean, the rest is history. You know what I mean? Just like I said, the math ain't hard. The math is not hard at all. So let's go back to number 3. So number 3 was to study the best methods of doing extension work among Negroes as developed anywhere in the territory, and to take such information to agents in other states. In states employing a sufficient number of Negro agents to justify separate direct supervision, a Negro state leader, sometimes called a district agent, is employed. A few states also have assistant leaders or district agents. 11 states employ supervisory Negro agents in men's work. 7 states have Negro women supervisory agents, and 6 states have Negro club leaders. Generally, all supervisory agents are located in the state Negro Agricultural and Mechanical College. And in all states, these institutions cooperate with the white agricultural and mechanical college in the promotion of these phases of extension. Agents, conferences, short courses for adults and club members, and like meetings of Negro agents and farmers are held each year at these institutions. See? So yeah, y'all. They knew what they were doing. You know, these are what these colleges and stuff were for. They were used to pump out recruits, to pump out agents. These were literally pipelines to the Department of Agriculture, so they can learn our ways, report on our ways, and basically eventually take over. So, it is what it is. But we know who the original is. And that goes without, that goes with no argument. Why would they focus on us so hard to where they had to base this whole thing around us? That's because we are the indigenous copper-colored people of this land. We were the original farmers, the original cultivators, the mound builders, the preservers, the protectors of this land. And they knew this. And if this doesn't make sense to you by now, I suggest you continue to do your research and, do the math.